because the person has been imposed within the mind upon the thing actually seen by the sensory perception. Now this, further to our purpose at the moment, simply means that if any person deeply concerned with problems such as yoga and tantra develops a certain type of mental intensification, they can cause the symbolic, diagrammatic forms of these chakras to be created in the mind. These forms can then be visualized in relationship to the body. And it is perfectly conceivable that the individual could see, as a result of the imagination moving ether, which is a reflecting medium, can actually see in the body any of the processes which are described in yoga. The thing you must realize, however, is that he has created them out of his own thinking. This does not mean that the yoga processes are not true, but it does mean that these processes are not necessarily identical with our expectancy about them. And the thing we see is in terms of our expectancy, because it is created by ourselves. Now, the practical side of this, and there is always a practical side to these problems, is that an individual can come, and many have come to me, who are in a rather terrible state of mind. They had taken a half a dozen lessons in yoga from an outstanding exponent who disappeared soon after and was not seen again. And as a result of this procedure, these individuals were beginning to have strange symptoms. And the only thing that they could finally decide was that their interior yogic chakric system had been badly mistreated by one cause or another, and that therefore they were in a horrible state, and about the only thing they could hope for was better luck in the next incarnation. These people described all of the unhappy symptoms which they theoretically assumed would accompany yoga. They insisted that at some time when they were least expecting it and really weren't even looking at that moment, this tremendous power of the Kundalini surged upward like a geysering oil well, burst into their brain, went out of the top of their head, and took their common sense with it. Now, this situation actually happens. People under such conditions are quite naturally frightened to death. And from this situation has arisen the belief that by wrong practices or by incorrect guidance, a great spiritual injury has been performed. Under this kind of terror, and under the prevailing mental tyranny which would associate with it, lives have been completely wrecked, and individuals have finally landed in hopeless mental breakdown and been confined in institutions. Actually, the chakras were not touched, moved, or involved, because nobody could actually create the condition which was described as a result of 6 lessons or 66 lessons. The actual moving of this peculiar psychic agent is so profound and involved a problem that the individual who was in trouble could not even have approached the beginning of it. What they had actually done was create a complete mental chain of chakras and blown this apart with their own fear. Now, this type of thing can happen, does happen, and another individual, incidentally, with a little psychic vision, might appear to see what they have seen, and they can get confirmation, because their own thought form has set up these etheric thought patterns which can be seen by another person. But the fact they can be seen still does not make them so. For in this entire phenomenon of mind, there is nothing that the mind testifies to that is finally true. This is an amazing but important fragment of philosophy. The fact that the mind has decided it is in itself prima facie evidence that there's something wrong with it. For the only truth is that which the mind cannot conceive. So the mind is, at best, an organ of diminishing error, in which by degrees we can overcome its most flagrant mistakes, but we cannot overcome its final mistake, which is self-existence, until, as the ancients believed, we had achieved the samadhi, or the final union with absolute being. So in the chakra problem, we are dealing with a series of symbols. The actual process in Tantra, in the higher schools of Tantra, was not the idea that by means of will and mind the individual was to change the structure of the chakra. The chakra is a condition. Conditions are not changed by will and yoga. Conditions are changed essentially by a kind of gradual transformation of value. Thus, the meditation significance of the chakra is very simple. The purpose of it is that man shall gradually experience the mystery of the era, by means of which the energy associated with the chakra is locked to a false usage. The purpose, therefore, is not to influence the chakra, not to force it, not to gain a valiant victory over it. The purpose of the meditation is to remove the error related to it. Now, the error related to the chakra is always the error of the use of energy. The chakra represents a pattern which has a true purpose and a false purpose. While it is negatively bound to the network of the nervous body system, the chakra is not fulfilling its essential purpose. For each of the sensory perceptions has as its final purpose the mingling of itself with all others for the attainment of the process or achievement of illumination or cosmic consciousness. This is not possible because in each chakra the consciousness factor is locked on the side of phenomena or on the side of physical function. Thus, every energy that is falsely bound to a physical process must be liberated in order that this energy may return to its proper state. And when the energies of the 7 sensory factors are all returned to their proper state, the result is illumination. It is the holding of the energy to false usage, or to inadequate usage, or the locking of the power of this energy away from those procedures which are natural to it and essential to its function. This is what the Yoga Chakra School seeks to understand and correct. So we have the releasing, or the so-called opening of the centers. This opening is, and never can be, associated in itself with danger, because good can never be dangerous. Furthermore, by its own various procedures, these chakra energies have to be released in order, in sequence, and by degrees. And the energy of even the least of these chakras has to be released in 4 stages. And in some of the chakras, the energy has to be released by 16 stages. In others, by 12 stages, but none less than 2 stages. And in the body itself, the number cannot be less than 4. The only one that can be less than 4 is the Ajna chakra in the forehead, which is of 2 petals only, and represents the one exception to this rule. But each of these is released by the meditation upon the meaning of the letter upon the petals. Now this has to be done by knowledge, by an actual factual awareness of facts. It is no more possible to go somewhere, sit down, and close your eyes tightly and go to work on this problem than it is to fly to the moon without mechanical help. With mechanical help we may make it. But we still will not be able to solve the mystery of the moon in the chakra. And there is one there. The answer to the situation, of course, lies in the relaxation of the uses of these energies as the individual gains equilibrium, freedom from excess. It is said that the petals open. In other words, the petals relax. Opening is relaxation. It is the assertion of the normal over the subnormal or the abnormal. In the case of man, these centers are originally represented as buds because they represent potentials of consciousness with the consciousness locked in them. By the quietude of consciousness, the Kundalini, which is the symbol in man of the ascending power of the pure volition of Atman. The Kundalini or Kundalini is therefore the tracing of the path of true growth, as opposed to all apparent or seeming growth. It is the gradual rising of the pure essence of consciousness through conditions to its final unconditioned release. It is the gradual unfolding of those creative powers in man which must finally have their final victory over the mental complex of idea sensation. So the achievement consists in the same way as the various steps in all the disciplines of religion. There is almost certainly an analogy also between the idea that man had that there were originally 7 important religions, and that these religions are in turn associated with the chakras. These religions probably stem from or are responsible for the concept of the 7 churches. There is no question that each of these religious systems is keyed primarily to a different key note, although the object of all is the object is always identical. The purpose of the religion is always a state of holiness. But each in its own way has a basic psychological concept as to how this is to be attained. There are religions of love, religions of service, religions of wisdom, religions of courage. There are religions which teach positive doctrines and others which seem to teach negative doctrines. And the ancients simply held that the great religions of the world were themselves, more or less, this symbol of the chakra chain, or as it's referred to by Sri Krishna in, I believe, the Uttara Gita, there is this idea of the one thread passing through the 7 beads. Now, the 7 beads can be the 7 chakras. The 7 beads can be the 7 religions. They can be the 7 races. They can be the 7 continents, the 7 forms of life, the species, the genera of all things. But wherever this septenary occurs, it finally tells us that the creative power itself, represented in Tantra by Shiva, that the creative power itself in meditation creates the 7 worlds from its own mental chakra centers, and that the creation is the setting in motion of the 7 wheels or chakras within the structure of universal mind. In this the atmosphere gets rather thin, but at the same time the symbolism is meaningful and I think has basic significance for us.